All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I am an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving entrepreneurs throughout the US and around the world. I am so excited about today's conversation. So I want to welcome you to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. Today we are talking to Bob Burg. Welcome, Bob.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Heather. Very exciting.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm so excited to have you today. So for those of you that don't know Bob, first of all, I had two friends separately that have different shows that reached out and said, you've got to have Bob on your podcast. And so I know when I get it from multiple places, I'm like, all right, I'm going to chase down Bob and we're going to get him on the podcast. But for those of you that don't know Bob, for over 30 years, Bob Burg has been successfully showing entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their referral business. Although for years he was best known for his sales classic, Endless Referrals, it's his business parable, The Go-Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, that has created a worldwide movement. While part of a 4-book series, The Go-Giver itself has sold more than 1 million copies and been translated into 30 languages. It was rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written and was on HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob is an advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. He is an unapologetic animal fanatic and served on the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his hometown of Jupiter, Florida. Welcome, Bob. What a lovely introduction.
Well, thank you. That was lovely how you said it. You know, we're about as opposite directionally in this country as we can possibly be, aren't we?
That's right. You are on the other coast and the far
Southeast
corner.
and Northwest, exactly.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm so glad to have you today. For folks that haven't heard from you before, tell us a little bit about your origins in business.
Began as a broadcaster, first in radio and then television. Was the late night news guy for a very, very small ABC affiliate in the Midwestern United States, about halfway between us. Mm-hmm. And I really wasn't very good at that. It turned out not to be my thing, but so I like to say I graduated into sales. Yeah. And I really loved it. I floundered for about the first few months because I had no background in sales and no training. But once I discovered a couple of books and realized all the great materials out there, this dates me, I know, but the cassette tape albums that I used to buy, right? And you don't even tell, you're much too young for that, Heather. You don't even know what those are, unless maybe your dad and mom were listening to those.
No. But first of all, I look a little young for my age, but I grew up in the days of making mixtapes all the time, right? So I lived for a good mixtape. I'm with you.
And so I really just got into, I just began reading and learning and studying, and I what I really loved about sales was really the personal development aspect, because you really had to kind of grow on the inside.
Yes.
Sure, sales is about serving your customers. It's about bringing value to the marketplace. Absolutely. But in order to do that, you had to be that person who could do that. Yeah. And that's where I really just took in all these books and the tapes, and I'd go to seminars and I just listen. And it was really such a wonderful experience.
I love that reflection, the fact that sales is all about personal development and the challenge that people face because I think people hear the word sales, right? And like some people, they automatically think of some terrible sales experiences they've had where they were on the receiving end of something that felt uncomfortable. But what was it like? You mentioned taking a few months to learn sales. What context were you learning sales in? What was that position where you got to learn sales?
Actually, I was selling radio and television advertising. Yeah.
Got it. Related to your work. Yep.
And to what you said about sales, absolutely. I think sales is one of those things. it just brings such a misperception, because so many think of selling as something, trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, right? And that's not selling. That's called being a con artist, right? If someone doesn't need or want it. Selling, by definition, Heather, I believe, is simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires, and helping them to get it. That's selling.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
selling. Selling is much more about listening and understanding, and then teaching and guiding, than it is, about talking about your product or service. And,
Yes. No. And when you think of it in that conversational framework, right? You're just having a conversation where you're being a human and a good listener and learning about like, we all do that. Like my husband has a particular aversion. Like even when we talk about sales, he's like, "Oh, I could never be a salesperson. And I was like, "What are you talking about? You can talk all day long to your friends or your family about things that you love or that you think they would love, right? That would change that. Like we all have it in us. We just don't think about it in the way, we don't think of it as sales."
I really believe that when most people say they have an aversion to selling or they don't like selling, it's not that they don't like selling, it's that they don't like what they think selling is.
Yes.
Really. But the old English root, and my co-author of the Go Giver series, John David Mann, he's the one who found this out. He's such a wordsmith. I mean, I am, but he really is, right? and it turns out the old English root of the word sell is salan, which meant to give. So when you're selling, you're literally giving. Now, someone might say, well, wait a second, isn't that just semantics? You're selling. What are you really giving? Well, let's say we're in a conversation with someone, you have a prospective customer or client in front of you as an entrepreneur, right? You're selling. What exactly are you giving? I suggest you're giving them time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and most of all, immense value. So when you are selling, you literally are giving.
Yeah, I love that. Now, I am sure there's quite a bit that happened between that initial work of learning sales and the book, right? The Go Giver, which obviously, as we talked about in your introduction, turned into a worldwide movement. Talk to us about how the idea of the book developed. Like, share with us some insights from your career and what you learned that led to this book.
So when I first started speaking, because eventually I worked my way up years later to sales management, sales leadership position, and started eventually showing people what was working for me and for my team. And as they said in Seinfeld, yada, 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 eventually had a speaking business, right? And a few years into it, I was at a conference, a National Speakers Association conference, and a couple of the older, wiser speakers there said, "Burg, you really need to write a book." And I said, "Well, I really don't want to write a book." And they said, "Well, that really doesn't matter. You probably it's going to really help you in your business. It's going to help position. It's all the reasons to write a book." I said, "Okay, well, it does make sense. And I'm a good student." So I actually wrote a book called Endless Referrals. Subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. This was in the mid 90s or early 90s. This is back in the day before there were like 1,000 billion books on networking. I think I was one of like 3 authors on networking. So the timing was really good, Now, by the way, and there are tons and tons of books on networking. I love them all. I mean, I learned something from all of them. But back then, it's just a matter of, it was a very uncrowded marketplace. So my niche was referrals and so forth. And so what the book was really about was, and this will lead into the Go Giver, but what the book was about was sharing a system. And by the way, personally, I define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A, and you'll eventually get the desired result of B. That's a system. And so it was a system for teaching entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service. They knew it brought immense value to people, but they might not have felt comfortable or confident going out into their local communities and creating the types of relationships that led to people wanting to do business with them personally and and refer them to others. So that's what the book was about. It was a how-to book. But I'd always, since I started reading, when I got into sales, I always loved parables, because parables are stories. And I think we all sort of intuitively know that stories connect at a deeper level than a how-to book, right? And so, I know whenever I'd read parables, I always felt a connection to the author, even if I didn't know them. I felt a connection with them. I felt a connection with the main character. I felt a connection with the message. I thought, what if we could take the basic premise of endless referrals, which is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, which is kind of been the phrase I've been known for since I've been speaking, for all these years. And what if we could take that and put that into a parable? So the first thing was really coming up with the title, and we simply asked, so what is the main essence of that salesperson, of that entrepreneur who can both quickly and sustainably create those know, like, and trust relationships? And it's that they're givers. They're always looking to give value, provide value to others. So coming up with the title, The Go-Giver, easy part. But you know what the best thing, Heather, that I did for that book was asking, and when I say asking, I mean pleading, with John David Mann, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write for, who was very well known within his particular niche. Now, today he is a well-known author, but back then, and he's written tons of books with different people, and he just recently had a thriller come out, and the guy's great. But back then, few people knew who he was. Fortunately, I did know. And so, I had asked him if he would work on this book with me, told him about the idea, and would he be the lead writer and storyteller? Believe me, this guy was the lead writer and storyteller. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. I never could have done this but it, we collaborated on it, and it really worked out well. And that's really how that happened.
Well, and the title of it, I think, is just brilliant. I think it can be challenging for people to choose a title that is just so spot on and connects with like the core message in a way that,
Thank you.
Yes, I do think that there is some genius in the title, and the fact that it became this, worldwide movement. Talk to the naysayers for a moment, because I think, and especially the world that I serve, right? So we talked a little bit about this. I serve experts, information entrepreneurs, people who are running, consulting services, coaching. They're building businesses around a body of information that they deliver. Many of them are extraordinarily heart-centered entrepreneurs, right? Their first instinct is to give. And doing that in a way that's not sustainable can really deplete your resources,
absolutely.
can deplete how you feel about your business, can deplete how you feel about, networking and establishing new relationships and all of the above. Talk to people who have been in the struggle of overgiving or giving in the wrong way. What's going on there?
So let's look at a couple of aspects of this, Heather, because what you brought up is so very important. Let's look at what we mean by the term go-giver, and then what we don't mean by it.
Perfect.
Okay. So go-giver simply means, it's simply understanding that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. Now, lest someone think that we're talking about some magical, mystical, just give. And no, that's what we're talking about at all. It's realizing that it's actually very rational, very logical. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on serving others, discovering, again, what they need, what they want, what they desire. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on helping people solve and overcome their challenges, helping bring them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell others about you. This is human nature.
Mm.
And the person who can do this, okay, they understand that money is simply an echo of value, right? It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means the more you focus on providing value to others, the money is simply a very natural and direct result of that value. Whenever I speak at corporate sales conferences, and I know your viewers and listeners are more entrepreneurial and so forth, but I think we'll still see the point that when I speak at a corporate conference, I'll look at the salespeople in the audience, and the first thing I say is, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Right.
Okay. Right. They're not going, we all laugh because we know that's true. Nobody's going to buy from you because you need the money, and nobody's going to buy from you just because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. So that's what we mean by being a go-giver. Now let's look at the opposite. Okay. Being a go-giver should never be misconstrued as being in any way congruent with being a doormat, a martyr, or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. So if you're feeling as though, not you, but I mean, if one is feeling as though they're being taken advantage of, and I mean this, as a pattern, I don't mean once in a while. I mean, we're human, everything, I mean, as if it's a pattern of being taken advantage of, you're giving yourself away, you're not right. Well, you've got to kind of look at who's involved every time that happens. And it's always you. Right. Yeah. And so there's a reason for it. And so we need to say, why am I creating a context where people are taking advantage of me and I'm allowing it? Why am I not setting limits? What is the payoff in a sense, and not conscious, but unconscious? What is it that I'm feeling? Am I, do I get to be that person who has, I have an excuse? Oh, I'm just such a giver, but I'm just not, right? Is it, there's lots of reasons. So we need to take that into consideration and ask ourselves why we're doing that.
Well, and I love that, especially in the context of a pattern that shows up, right? Any of us who start to see a pattern in our life, whether it's with our clients, whether it's with a certain system in our business, something not working, we have a chance to look at it and really fix it.
Absolutely.
When you're talking about giving, especially in the context, let's talk about sales or enrollment conversations, right? Sure. That happen in all of these small businesses. Share with us your thoughts on how somebody gives tremendous value because I feel like there's a struggle where people give too much in an effort to enroll somebody, right? To demonstrate, like, here's what it would be like to work with me. Talk to us about how you demonstrate that and give tremendous value without over giving so much that somebody's like, oh, I got what I need. I don't actually need to work with you.
Right. So there are certain aspects like content creation that we all do, that we do. That is a strategy. Okay. That's not being a go-giver. It's not being a go-giver. It's just simply a strategy. We provide content so people can have a chance to get to know what we do. They know our work. They have confidence in us in terms of competence, in terms of character, in terms of how we present ourselves through that. So that's but we know, as we provide this content, that for people to really get the most out of it, they're going to need to work with us personally, just by the very nature of the thing. It's not a bait and switch. That's just how it is. Okay. It's like writing a book. Person reads a book, they can apply. There should be very value based, just like the content you put out there. But and some people will, by the way, be able to get what they need sort of just from that and not take it to it. But the people who are really serious about what they want to do in advancing, they're going to know they need to. Okay. It's the same thing when you have a consult with someone. Maybe you have maybe you're a coach and you have a free consult with someone. Okay. And You're providing them with great value-based information. While you're doing it, you're asking questions to discover their need, want, desire. You're looking to find where, what happens if they don't do something different from what they're doing now. And you ask them the right questions. Would it be, what would your business look like 6 months from now if you didn't do anything about this issue that you're telling me you have? Okay, so we're painting a picture, and we're in the sales process as we're providing them exceptional value. Now, I mean, so what about that person who kind of keeps coming back to you and ask you questions, and they're not, really wanting to pay you for your time? Well, what you've got to do, and here's the thing: if this is something that happens a bunch, again, if it's a pattern, here's the good news: you know to expect this, and if you know to expect this, you can have a response that's going to be helpful to everybody involved. So it might be something as simple as, thank you for asking. It sounds like from our conversations as though you really feel you've gotten some good value from this. Yeah, I've really enjoyed our conversations. That's terrific. And this is actually what I do on a professional level. So if you would like to have a professional relationship with me where I can help you to whatever the benefit is, blah, 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 I'd be honored to do so. Is that what you would like to do?
Yeah.
Okay. You've now basically, in a very nice, tactful, diplomatic way, let this person know, I'd love to work with you, but at this point, now it's going to have to be for a fee.
Yeah. Well, it's, I think that, that example happens a lot to people in the coaching, consulting, information world, because people do. And part of it is what you're talking about. There's so much content. There's so many ways that we can serve. There's so many ways we can support people with information. And at some point, we do need to be having enrolling conversations. And I'm so glad you raised like the whole crux of this, which for me is about what questions are you asking somebody to get to the heart, right? It goes back to that human element of, are you having a conversation versus just demonstrating value in your services or demonstrating that you're the expert, right? And I know in your book, and there's a lot there, so we won't go over it all, but could you quickly walk us through the 5 laws that you cover in that book?
Yeah, the laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. The law of value, which says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, that can be very easily misconstrued, right? Give more in value than I take in payment. Now, that sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy. It's simply understanding the difference between price and value. Yes. Price is a dollar figure. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user or beholder. If you have a coaching client and you charge them over the course of the time, it would just name a round figure, $25,000, okay, for however long that was, and they're able to increase their business $200,000. Well, you've given them more in value than what you took in payment, but you made a very healthy profit, which you should, because it was worth it to you to invest your time, resources, knowledge, wisdom, and so forth in that. So that's all that means. So in other words, both parties profit, because both parties come away better off afterwards than they were before. The law of compensation says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1, the law of value, is all about your potential income, law number 2 is all about how many lives you impact with that value. So we could say exceptional value, law number 1, and significant reach, law number 2, equals very high compensation. Law number 3, the law of influence, says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. No, not in a way that's self-sacrificial, but simply understanding, as Joe, the protege in the story, learned from several of the mentors, and we talked about earlier, the golden rule of business, of sales, is that, again, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Well, Heather, there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those types of feelings toward you and others than by genuinely moving from an I focus or me focus to that other focus. Or as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, advised Joe, it's making your win all about the other person's win.
Mhm.
Law number 4, the law of authenticity, says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. Deborah Davenport, the mentor in this part of the story, shared a great lesson that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are indeed all very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel very comfortable with you. They feel very safe with you. And why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting, right?
Yeah.
And then law number 5 is the law of receptivity. This one sort of ties it all together. This says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. This really means nothing more than understanding that, yeah, you breathe out. Well, you've also got to breathe in. It's not one or the other. We breathe out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving. We breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are not opposite concepts, despite the horrible messages of lack and anti-prosperity we get from the world around us. It's just horrible, and it gets into our unconscious, and that's why people have money issues and why people undercharge and they don't recognize it, right, their own value. And so giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin. They work in tandem, right? It's not, are you a giver or a receiver? You're a giver and a receiver. But what you also know is that the giving comes first. This is a law of life. We plant before we harvest. We sow before we reap. We give before we receive. So long as we're focused on the giving to plenty, placing their interests first, coming at it from our authentic core, now we just have to allow ourselves to receive. When we do this, we create that benevolent context for success.
I love that entire framework and the way that you describe the concepts, including the balance between, those concepts, the being able to receive as well as give. I know so many people that can give and are really challenged when it comes to receiving.
Yeah.
Right. But there has to be that balance. And especially when you're talking about in the context of business.
Oh, there has to be. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you find that people are most challenged when you look at?
That's absolutely the one.
Is it
law of receptivity?
Receptivity.
We get more notes from people that chapter is what allowed them to finally see that, yeah, it's okay to receive. It's a good thing to receive.
Oh, I love that.
But I also, Heather, believe that while we covered it on a surface level in the book, there's a lot more to it than that. And that's why I'm a big believer in making a study of prosperity. And there are great prosperity teachers and speakers and authors out there, from Randy Gage to Sharon Lecter, to Ellen Rogan, to Ken Honda, to the late Bob Proctor and David Nagel. And there's just so many great speakers and teachers and bloggers and posters. I just think it's important because, again, we get all the horrible anti-prosperity messages from everywhere around us. And it really gets into your head. And the insidious part is it's your unconscious that it gets into.
Well, that's right.
Know, right.
And depending on your background, it starts when you're teeny tiny.
Can be a matter of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television, movie, everywhere. Exactly.
Yeah, it's huge. What was the one piece of advice that you received, if you were to choose one along your journey, long before you wrote this book, that you found, especially looking backwards, most valuable?
Well, I think it was when the day I was in a real sales slump. And a guy at the company, an older guy, he wasn't even in the sales department, but he was one of these guys. He didn't say much, but when he did, it was usually profound. And I think he saw me as sort of like Joe in the story that I would write with John David Mann 25, 30 years later, whatever. He saw me as that young, ambitious, up and coming, but very frustrated young salesperson whose focus was in the wrong place. And he said, Burg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money, and you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, The money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others.
I love that. I read a book, I think it might have been The Nordstrom Way, but there was
Oh,
a phrase that stuck with me about, like, if your business is just all about making money, it's a bad business. It's not a sustainable business. And I
no.
think even from a personal standpoint, it doesn't become sustainable. So I love that takeaway. Um, so Bob, for folks that are listening with us today, where do you like for them to find you online?
Best place is just my website, which is
Yep.
Burg, BURG.com. And there's a whole bunch of resources there people can check out if they'd like.
Awesome. And we will definitely share that, as well as any social media links you have for us in the show notes. So you're welcome to pop over to legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Bob, what final bit of advice do you have for folks that are with us today?
I'd say when it comes right down to it, it's really how much we can not deny our self-interest, because that's part of human nature, but willingly suspend our self-interest and really, really just focus on bringing immense value to others. And again, there's nothing self-sacrificial about it, because
Yeah.
to the degree you do that, that is the degree that you develop that know, like, and trust relationship. And it's the relationship that drives the business.
Well, and I love the emphasis on the point that it's not self-sacrificial to do that. I think people sometimes get that wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Bob, thank you for being with us today. It's such a pleasure to connect with you. I'm so
Thank you,
grateful
Heather.
for your time, and I just adore your message. I love your book. Everybody needs to pop over and get a copy. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.